From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. This is Dateline Malacañang. Malacañang has allowed government offices to implement a work-from-home setup from 8 in the morning to 12 noon and suspend work from noon onwards on Holy Wednesday. This is to provide government employees the opportunity to travel and prepare for the Holy Week break. Signed by Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin on Monday, Memorandum Circular number 81 states that in order to provide government employees full opportunity to properly observe Maundy Thursday and Good Friday on the 17th and 18th of April, and to allow them to travel to and from the different regions in the country, the following arrangements are hereby adopted in government offices on the 16th of April 2025. Work from home from 8 in the morning to 12 in the afternoon, subject to existing laws, rules, and regulations, and suspension of work in government offices from 12 in the afternoon onwards. However, agencies involved in the delivery of basic and health services, preparedness and or response to disasters and calamities, and vital services will continue their operations under usual working arrangements. Meanwhile, the adoption of work from home and suspension of work for private companies and offices is left to the discretion of their employers. Since the weekend, and with most schools on vacation, travelers have already started heading to the provinces to observe Holy Week, which commemorates the Passion, Death, and Resurrection of Jesus Christ through church services, processions, and personal acts of penance.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. condemned the actions of a Russian vlogger who was recently arrested for harassing and insulting Filipinos for content, saying the country must stand firm against such behavior and not tolerate abuse disguised as entertainment. In his latest vlog shared on social media Monday, the president lamented how some foreign vloggers come to the Philippines to provoke, mock, and demean Filipinos for online attention. The foreigner is facing criminal complaints for allegedly harassing security guards, stealing an industrial fan from a restaurant while live streaming at a mall in Taguig City, and verbally insulting a windsurfing instructor in Boracay Island. The chief executive reminded the public not to support content creators whose only aim is to sow disrespect, adding that such conduct is un-Filipino and should be rejected. Acknowledging that Filipinos are kind, humble, and patient in nature, President Marcos said these traits should never be mistaken for weakness or become targets of mockery. President Marcos assured the public that the government will hold those responsible accountable and send a clear message to others who may be planning similar stunts.
Nakakalungkot dahil ito isang naging bahagi na ng social media na nagkakaroon ng mga vlogger na nanggugulo lang, nang aasar lang, nang buwisit lang, nang babastos lang para makakuha ng mga viewers. Huwag tayong sasama dyan sa ganyang klaseng ugali. Hindi naman ganyan ang ugaling Pilipino. Asahan ninyo, yung mga gumagawa ng ganyan, hindi natin pababayaan na patuloy nilang ginagawa. Likas na mababait ang mga Pilipino. Magalang, makapumbaba, napakahaba ng pasensya. Kaya't nakakalungkot na makitang naaabusong ganito nating katangian. Natural sa atin na matawanan lamang at hindi na palakihin ang mga ganitong klaseng pambabastos. Pero hindi nanghuhulugan na palalampasin ito ng ating pamahalaan.
That was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Monday denounced what he described as a growing culture of aggression and violence on Philippine roads as he addressed the mounting viral road rage incidents that have resulted in physical confrontations and, in some cases, death. In his latest vlog, President Marcos asked, "What is this culture of being all fired up on the road, and where did we get it?" The president's remarks come as the country reels from a series of violent road altercations caught on video and widely shared on social media. The chief executive said driving is a privilege, not a right, and that holding a license comes with the obligation to act responsibly. President Marcos also called on bystanders or eyewitnesses to help pacify the tension rather than just recording the incident. Appealing for calm and discipline, the president called on the public to embrace a culture of patience and respect, especially in stressful traffic situations. President Marcos Jr. warned that giving in to anger, even momentarily, could bring irreversible consequences, not just to individuals involved, but to their families as well. The chief executive acknowledged the frustration that traffic congestion and reckless drivers often cause. However, he said these are never excuses for violence.
Tatapang na natin lahat. Siga lahat. Ano na ba ang kultura na ito na pagiging siga sa daan? Saan ba natin nakuha ito? Ano na bang nangyayari sa atin? At parang natural lang ang mga ganitong konfrontasyon at karahasan. Tayong lahat ay kailangan sumunod sa batas trapiko. Kailangan ang disiplina para maging responsableng mga Pilipino sa lansangan. Huwag maging kamote. Masyado nang madami yan. Ang lisensya sa pagmamaneho ay isang pribilehyo at hindi ito karapatan. At bukod sa dunong sa pagmamaneho, ang lahat ay kailangan ayusin ang pag-uugali sa pagmamaneho at habaan ang pasensya. Yung ibang tao din sa paligid, umawat tayo. Imbis na mag-video, ituring na natin mayroon tayong tungkulin na panatilihin ang kapayapaan sa paligid natin. Ang bagong Pilipino ay disiplinado sa lansangan, maingat sa pananalita, nagtitimpi at pinipili ang kapayapaan. Ang lahat ay napapag-usapan ng maayos at malumanay. Lugi tayo at ang mga pamilya natin sa mga posibleng dala nitong kapalit kung hahayaan natin lamunin tayo ng galit kahit isang saglit lamang. Naunawaan ko naman na kung minsan talaga nakakainit ulo ang mga traffic at kung minsan napapasabay tayo sa daan sa mga hindi sumusunod sa batas trapiko. Pasensya na lang, palampasin nyo na lang. Ano naman ang mawawala sa atin? 1 second, 5 seconds, 20 seconds. Pagbigyan na natin at huwag na natin patulan.
That was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, the Philippines Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, on Monday addressed the issue about the growing number of hunger incidents in the country. During a press briefing in Malacañang, DSWD Assistant Secretary and spokesperson Irene Dumlao acknowledged poverty as the driver causing hunger in the Philippines. Dumlao enumerated various projects being implemented by the agency to address these issues. These projects include the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program or 4Ps, Walang Gutom Program, Assistance to Individuals in Crisis Situations or AICS, and the Ayuda para sa Kapos ang Kita Program or AKAP. These projects aim to help poor families provide for food and educational needs of the children. Assistant Secretary Dumlao also stated that these projects are being studied to assess the areas that needs to be improved, such as the amount being received by the beneficiaries and the frequency of distribution. The DSWD spokesperson added that the agency is working on commissions with other private sectors to further study the effects of these projects. Dumlao also highlighted that the Walang Gutom Kitchen is under improvement as there are proposals for the expansion of the project, particularly on poverty hotspots such as areas in Visayas, Mindanao, and Northern Metropolis. Additionally, the spokesperson emphasized that there are more than 700,000 household beneficiaries of 4Ps that have met Level 3 or self-sufficiency level. Most of these households already graduated from the program. The agency remains optimistic that the hunger and poverty rate will be reduced to a single-digit percentage before the term of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. ends in 2028.
Unang-una po, rini-recognize ng DSWD na multifaceted po yung causes ng hunger and poverty. Kaya nga din po, multi-pronged approach din yung ina-adapt ng aming pong ahensya. We remain steadfast sa pagtataguyod ng mga iba't ibang mga inisyatibo para matugunan po yung issue sa hunger and poverty. And of course, dun sa pagpapabuti at pagpapalawig rin ng mga existing programs ng aming pong ahensya. Kabilang na dyan yung Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program na namumuhunan sa edukasyon at kalusugan ng mga children beneficiaries. Dahil naniniwala po tayo, driver kasi yung hunger sa poverty. Kapag po hindi malulusog ang mga bata, nawawalan po sila ng oportunidad para magkaroon ng magandang kinabukasan. Nakakaapekto ito sa kanilang pag-aaral at sa kanilang productivity. Kung kaya nga po, sabi ko, namumuhunan talaga tayo sa edukasyon at kalusugan. At hindi lamang po iyan, hindi lamang po yung pagbabantay sa specific compliance to the conditions of the program ang ginagawa natin. Nakikipag-ugnayan din tayo sa ibang ahensya ng pamahalaan para mabigyan din ng oportunidad ang mga 4Ps members na magkaroon ng trabaho. Isa po dyan yung ating partnership with the Department of Labor and Employment. Meron po tayong trabaho para sa 4Ps sa Bagong Pilipinas. So, batay po doon sa pinakahuling datos, 9 events na po yung naisagawa natin. Mahigit 400 yung hired on the spot sa events na yon. Mahigit 3,000 na mga 4Ps beneficiaries ang nabigyan ng pagkakataon na magkaroon ng empleyo sa mga iba't ibang mga organizations. Meron din tayo yung assistance to individuals in crisis situation. Ito po yung mga interventions, yung mga social assistance na ibinabahagi natin because there are unwanted events o mga adverse shocks na nakakaapekto po sa mahirap na pamilya at kinakailangan na makaution natin yung impact po nito. Kaya ganito, may mga social safety nets din tayo na ipinapatupad. Inflation is another issue na nakakaapekto rin po sa well-being ng ating mga kababayang mahirap. Kung kaya nga po meron din tayong ayuda para sa Kapos ang Kita program. Again, it's a social safety net that cushions the impact of rising inflation to individuals who are affected by rising inflation and whose income do not exceed or yung kinikita nila ay hindi nag-exceed dun sa statutory minimum wage. While of course we recognize, we acknowledge ito pong mga pag-aaral na ito, tinitignan din natin at ibinabangga doon sa mga scientific studies na isinasagawa ng ating pong pamahalaan. As to timeline, sabi nga po ni Pangulong Marcos Jr., dapat maibaba natin ang poverty incidence to a single-digit percentage before the end of his term. DSWD is committed in contributing to the attainment of that goal. At pinagsisikapan po namin para mas mapabilis pa yung pagbaba nitong poverty incidence sa ating bansa.
That was Department of Social Welfare and Development Assistant Secretary and spokesperson Irene Dumlao.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang on Monday commended the volunteers from the Philippines who went to Myanmar to help the country amidst the crisis. On April 1st, the Philippine Interagency Humanitarian Contingent, or PHIAC, departed to Myanmar to provide aid in rescuing victims, distributing food packs, and providing medical assistance. The 91-member team returned home on Sunday after 13 days of continuous volunteerism. In a Palace Press briefing, Presidential Communications Office or PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro extended the Palace's gratitude to these brave individuals who played a pivotal role in the rescue operations in Myanmar and acknowledged this as a step into maintaining a good relationship with neighboring countries. Myanmar was hit by a 7.7 magnitude earthquake on March 29th that killed over 3,550 individuals.
Nagkaroon po ito ng commendation at sila po talaga ay kumbaga ipinarangalan po dahil sa kanilang napakatapang na pagsagupa dito sa kanilang obligasyon at sa kanilang duty po. Kaya po ang lahat po na nanggaling po at tumulong po sa Myanmar, kayo po ay aming pinasasalamatan. Kapuri-puri po ang inyong mga ginawa.
That was Palace Press Officer and Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Also on Monday, Malacañang Palace hopes that operations for the online voting and counting system, or OVCS for Overseas Filipino Voters, goes smoothly. The Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, recently launched the first online voting system for Filipinos abroad, wherein voters may cast their votes online using their cell phones or personal computers. This voting system will last for a month. It has already started Sunday, April 13th, and will end on May 12th. During a press briefing, Presidential Communications Office, or PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro acknowledged this as an important step towards innovative ideas that will help the comfort of the Filipinos, even those who are abroad. Castro also encouraged overseas voters to vote wisely and reminded the voters to avoid voting due to peer pressure or even illegal vote buying. The registration for the online voting system for Filipinos abroad started on March 20th and will continue until May 7th. Currently, only 47,976 from 1.241 million Filipino voters abroad are registered. Malacañang then invited everyone, especially those abroad, to exercise their right and vote for rightful leaders.
Yan po ay karapatan po talaga nila. Dito po nila mapapakita ang kanilang boses, ang ating mensahe po mula sa palasyo ay gampanan niyo po ang inyong tungkulin bilang isang Pilipino. Bumoto po kayo ng nararapat. Bumoto po mula sa puso. Huwag pong bumoto dahil lamang sa bulong o dahil kayo'y nabayaran, kundi iboto niyo po ang mga taong nararapat, yung maaasahan po natin, mga leader na hindi ibebenta ang bansa kahit sa anumang paraan, at mga leader na makabayan. Sana po mas maging maayos po ito at dahil po ito ay mas mapapabilis po ang pamamaraan ng pagboto ng ating mga kababayan.
That was Palace Press Officer and Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Still on Monday, Malacañang shared President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s plans for the Holy Week. In a Palace Press briefing, Presidential Communications Office or PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said, President Marcos will be spending the beginning of his Holy Week with meetings and deliberations and will be spending Thursday to Saturday with his family. As the president has always been busy, Castro added, he sees this as a perfect opportunity to bond and connect with his loved ones. However, the chief executive still gave various government agencies directives to maintain peace and order amidst the vacation season, especially on travel hotspots. The Palace Press Officer highlighted that President Marcos instructed to maintain security and order on airports where travelers and tourists are expected to converge.
Naitanong po natin at siya po ay makakasama niya po ang kanyang pamilya. He will spend his time with his family. At ang mga detalye po ay hindi ko na po maibibigay. Yun lang po.
Hindi po sinabi kung saan.
Hindi po sinabi sa amin kung saan.
At kailan po mag-start yung...
Opo, basta he will be spending his time during this Holy Week. Most probably starting Thursday. Opo, pero yun lang po. Itong Holy Week na po ay... bibigyan niya po naman ng oras ang kanyang pamilya para po sila magkasama-sama. Dahil sa sobrang busy ng ating Pangulo sa kanyang mga activities. So, yan po. Meron pa po.
Outside of the palace?
Sa aking pagkakaalam, meron din pong magaganap dito sa palasyo. Pero mga meetings lang po. So, i-include po natin yung mga meetings.
That was Palace Press Officer and Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. vetoed a bill seeking to amend certain provisions of the revised charter of Baguio City due to inconsistencies with existing laws and jurisprudence, as well as its possible adverse effects on the power of the Basis Conversion and Development Authority or BCDA. In a press briefing in Malacañang Monday, Presidential Communications Office or PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro explained the President's decision, which was formalized in a video message sent to Congress.
Sinabi po niya dito na, I am constrained to veto the bill as it is inconsistent with law and jurisprudence, and it may endanger or prejudice the authority previously granted to the BCDA. So kinikilala po ng Pangulo ang karapatan at authority ng BCDA patungkol po dito. Kaya po na-veto po ang Act amending Sections 23 and 52 and repealing Section 55 of the Republic Act number 11689, otherwise known as the Revised Charter of the City of Baguio.
The measure, titled An Act Amending Sections 23 and 52 and Repealing Section 55 of Republic Act number 11689, otherwise known as the Revised Charter of the City of Baguio, sought to modify certain administrative and land management provisions of the city's charter. Its amendments include the removal of a provision requiring Baguio to transmit all ordinances to the Benguet Provincial Board for approval, exclusion of Camp John Hay management from Baguio's Special Land Use Committee, and repeal Section 55 of the Revised Charter, which expanded the land area under the BCDA from 570 hectares to 625 hectares. The BCDA, a government agency under the Office of the President, manages former military bases and other properties, including parcels of land in Baguio City, previously used by the United States military and now subject to conversion for civilian use. The revised Baguio City Charter, which replaced the 1909 Charter, lapsed into law in 2022.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that concludes today's edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.